have a motion to to return the regular board meeting to public session? Ms. Kazmierzak-Bogner, thank you. Dr. Littman, second. All in favor? Abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. I call the regular board meeting to order. All board members are present. Dr. McClary, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be advised that in the event of a fire emergency and an evacuation should be necessary, an alarm will sound. Please note all marked emergency exits and evacuate well away from the building. At this time, we request that everyone please turn their cell phones and other electronic devices to silent. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Thank you, Mrs. Van Cise. Is there a second? Ms. Poland? Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 3, recognition and board acknowledgements. Dr. Brown Hall, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, President Lotherborough. Tonight, as many of you entered the boardroom, you were greeted by the music of the Mill Chamber Music Ensemble. I want to thank them for their incredible performance tonight. Throughout our district, we have incredible teachers who impact the lives of our students. But one Casey Middle School math teacher has earned statewide recognition for his work in mathematics. Harry O'Malley is one of 2 state finalists for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching, which is the highest recognition that a kindergarten through 12th grade science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and/or computer science teacher may receive for outstanding teaching in the United States. Here's a look at this incredible honor for Mr. O'Malley.
So today's concept is the same thing we started yesterday. It's the word ratio. Without any doubt, can say that I put a lot of effort into what I do. And I care about it. I care about the kids. I care about what I'm bringing to the table every day.
Harry O'Malley is a passionate educator who cares about mathematics and quality instruction. He's had a major impact on our students and our staff here. And really what underscores his work is the belief that any student can be good at math. There's no such thing as a good student in math or a bad math student. Every student has the capacity to learn and be successful. And he's built that culture here at Casey.
How many mushrooms and how many tomatoes are there on each pizza? Stella?
There's 4 mushrooms and 2 tomatoes.
4 mushrooms and 2 tomatoes. So that's where this idea of ratio comes in. Just an honor to kind of be, among past awardees and things. I do know through my online connections, nationally, a number of other people who actually have won the award. To be potentially in the same, class or in the same, group as those other educators is an honor.
He reaches learners at their next point of learning and extends them to the next level of learning. He's just a consummate educator, somebody that we all can look up to, and we're all so proud of him.
To represent this district is something that I would be very proud of. I do feel that it's not just an award for me at all. It's a community award.
Awesome. So Monday was National STEM Day. New to the district this year are our elementary school STEAM labs, where students get hands-on experience with science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics. In recognition of the STEAM labs, I'd like to welcome Mr. Tom Bird, who is our instructional specialist for science, to share more on this incredible program. Mr. Bird?
Thank you and good evening. I'm extremely grateful to have the opportunity to say a few words about our new STEAM program this evening. First, as you know, STEAM represents a strategy and an educational structure that utilizes the areas of science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math in a connected and cohesive plan, which emphasize the 21st century skills of critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and all with a growth mindset. Secondly, I want to briefly highlight the need for our STEAM program. This is from the National Survey of Science and Math Educators, and I quote, "For a variety of reasons, the national average instructional time for science has decreased over the past 10 to 15 years. Additionally, from the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the national average science assessment scores in fourth grade in 2019 were actually lower than scores in 2015 and have remained flat over the past 15 years. The National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine report that science and engineering instruction are under-resourced and not highly prioritized in elementary schools across our country. Although these issues represent a national crisis for many areas of our country, I want to interject a footnote and state that Williamsville's science assessment scores have always been and remain above the national averages, and our district's financial commitment and support of our science, engineering, and technology education programs has always been exemplary. Next, I'm going to refer to a pre-publication copy of the National Academy's book titled Science and Engineering in Preschool Through Elementary Grades. In this book, the academies have made 18 recommendations to address these national issues. I would like to share with you recommendation number 2. District and school leaders in elementary and preschool settings should examine the amount of time and resources allocated to science and engineering instruction. And then A, develop schedules that allow a comprehensive, frequent, and consistent focus on science and engineering. B, create coherence from preschool through elementary school. And C, allocate the necessary resources, fiscal, material, and human, to support equitable science and engineering learning opportunities. I commend and applaud you because in initiating and implementing our elementary STEAM program, I believe we as a district have fulfilled recommendation 2. We have developed a definite schedule where all of our K-4 students attend STEAM class once every 5 days. We are scaffolding and differentiating our program K-4, and you have allocated the necessary fiscal, material, and human resources. Our students will now have the opportunity to engage in STEAM practices and activities that promote critical thinking, real-world problem solving, collaboration, and communication skills. These skills will greatly benefit our students as they progress through their educations and careers. Our program may be in the fledgling stage right now, but I am completely convinced that it will only get bigger and better. I want to sincerely thank the Board of Education, Dr. Brown Hall, Dr. Balin, Mr. Matursky, our elementary principals. All of them saw the need and then wholeheartedly supported our new STEAM program. And finally, I want to especially thank our 6 STEAM teachers. They willingly accepted the challenge of embarking on this new adventure, and their passion for and commitment to STEAM education and to their students are displayed every day in their classrooms. Thank you. I hope now that you will enjoy this brief video, which is an example of an exciting STEAM class. And President Leatherbarrow, I appreciate the sweatshirt.
Thank you.
What ocean is the ring of fire surrounding?
Pacific.
Awesome. So STEAM is a program where all students succeed. Everyone's able to get their hands on, have a part of the process since they're working as a team, they're collaborating. They're able to problem solve, think creatively. They're able to pull their individual strengths in order to accomplish the task or the experiment at hand. Why the soap?
Maybe so there's more lava to erupt out, because it'll give it like more volume so it erupts better. Hurry! Whoa!
Pretty cool. Everyone gets a turn and teamwork.
In the real world, they are given problems, they're given challenges, and they have to figure out how to tackle it. When it's not going well, they have to figure out how to, as we use in our engineering process, improve it and test again. So as early as kindergarten, they're able to start developing those skills. So by the time they move through middle school, high school, into the workforce, they're able to tackle projects by thinking and using their problem solving. Children love it. They can't wait to come here every week.
We don't just sit on our desks and do pencil and paper. We do actual fun stuff.
I hear them walk by the classroom door and, I hear them say, oh, when do we get to go to STEAM? And they come in excited. They leave feeling great. They don't realize that they are learning lifelong skills while they're in here. They think that they're just having fun and doing something that they don't get to do throughout the week through the hands-on experiments.
Awesome. Very. And thank you, Mr. Bird. Tonight, we wrap up our recognitions with our school spotlight, highlighting the great work that goes on within all of our buildings. This month, our school spotlight focuses on Transit Middle School and their fall musical, Moana Jr. I'd now like to welcome Principal Dr. Dan Wall to share more. There he is.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. On behalf of Transit Middle School, I'd like to let you know musical theater and musical performing arts is back, and we're happy to have it back at Transit. And we're very happy to debut our musical Moana in the coming weeks. Our students have been practicing since September, and it is the epitome of learning. Similar to the STEAM Lab, students collaborating, working to make something bigger than themselves, bigger than one person, to make a musical happen is an amazing work of art. And we're really happy to have a strong performing music program at Transit. And that only happens because of the dedication of the adults in our children's lives. So our directors, Nancy Gattillo, Jackie Elmar, our sound and lights gentleman, Randy Schreiber, these are the people making it happen, working with students outside of the school day to put on these amazing musicals. So we're happy to debut Moana in the coming weeks, and I believe we have a highlight to share with the group today. So
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wall.
Thank you.
Welcome to the set of Moana. We are so happy to have the musical up and running again this year after taking a year off. Broadway's back, so are we. This is like the largest project-based learning experience students can have here at Transit. They're taking all the lessons that they learn in the classroom and bringing them here to the stage. So whether it's reading, writing, the music they're singing, the choreography, the math behind the lighting and the sound and the timing, all of these skills are coming together, but they're at the application level, which is what we want to see with our students. That idea of teaching isn't lost here on stage either. Our directors are doing an amazing job, and they're bringing their teaching skills here to the stage.
Wait to give that direction straight to the audience.
They are learning to public speak and use their voice. They are learning how to be on a team. They are learning responsibility. They're learning time management because they have to go home and do their homework. They're on sports teams. They're in band. They're in chorus. They're in orchestra. So they have other things to practice. There's a lot that goes on and that these kids are absorbing so quickly. It gives them another outlet to learn about themselves and to grow with other students who are like them and with their peers. And the arts give students a sense of community.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I play Chief Ancestor 1.
The chief ancestors in the show are the deceased that have gone before Moana, and her ancestors were voyagers. So they helped Moana on her journey to restore the heart of Te Fiti. Everyone who's been a part of this musical has worked so hard, including the adults who have just helped to make this all happen. It's so awesome just seeing everything just come together. I just feel really lucky to be here, and yeah, it's just so much fun being able to perform with others.
Hi, my name is Brady Sadkin, and I play Maui in Moana Jr. Maui is the demigod in Moana, and he guides Moana along the journey to restore the heart. And he's basically like the comedic relief of the movie and the musical. It's really exciting. It's fun being on stage and with the crew and the cast. It's all really fun to see them every day and rehearse.
Hi, my name is Rihanna Benjamin, and I play Grandma Tala. So Grandma, as I think, is the main in the story, because without the grandma, no one would encourage Moana to go save Te Fiti. Since last year was online, I'm really happy that this year we get to come in person and do everything together. It's really fun when you're working with your friends and teachers. I used to be really shy in 6th grade till 7th. And I think this play really helps me not to be shy.
Throw it up, throw it out.
It's really beautiful to watch them from start to finish really just develop into their own and become comfortable more with themselves than anything else. I think that's why we do it. It's so much stress. There's so much involved behind the scenes that people don't realize. But then when you see those kids at the end and how much it meant to them throughout the whole process, that's why we do it. They are like our kids in a way. And when they get out there, nothing but pride comes out of us, because we just sit there and think, wow, look at how far they've come and just how incredible that they are. So we love that part. That's just the most amazing experience of it all.
Oh, I can't wait. Thank you, Dr. Wall. We can't wait to see Moana Jr.
Thank you very much. Are there any board acknowledgements? All right, thank you. We are now moving on to public expression. I call on Ms. Kazmierzak-Bogner to review our public expression format.
Thank you. Welcome to all who have come to observe this regular board meeting. Although state law does not require us to hold a public comment period, we have chosen to do so because we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and their issues. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns and questions tonight. This is because we take your concerns seriously, and we want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will respond to you by email after our meeting, or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. Also, please be aware that under state and federal privacy laws and per policy 1510, we are unable to entertain any comments related to employee personnel information or any topic that may disclose information about a particular student. On these matters, we would ask that you go through the appropriate administrative channels. Finally, we recognize that right now our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that both our school board and our community members can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and audience members maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. We ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return once order has been restored. The board will now entertain public comments for up to 30 minutes. Each individual speaker is allotted 3 minutes. You will be signaled at 2.5 minutes so that you may conclude your remarks. The individual time limits will be enforced. After I call on you, please step up to the podium and state your name. Our first speaker signed up for this evening is Darlene Mcclay.
Good evening. My name is Darlene Mcclay, and I stand before you as the mother of 4 children who graduated from Williamsville schools. One in 2015, one in 2016, and twins in 2021. I came tonight after reading with interest and great sadness the comments, criticisms, hatred, misinformation, and opinions I have read on social media from parents of our district on the topic of transgender students. A copy of an email was sent to Mr. Swatland after the last board meeting from a mother who, it was posted on Facebook, and it read, "I demand to know how you are going to protect my daughter from those people." I'm here today because I have a child who's one of those people. I have a child who's transgender. I'm here today because our story begins over 10 years ago when our oldest was a freshman at Williamsville East and came out as gay. I reached out to the school social worker at Williamsville East, and she agreed to meet with me because I was scared as to what my child's life would and could be as an adult, gay adult. I didn't know how my child could be treated in school, in the workforce, in relationships, and how my child could handle rejection and judgment growing up gay in elite Williamsville. During our meeting, the social worker informed me that there was another mother who she was working with who had a daughter who was transgender, to which I instantly replied, "If that ever happens to my child, you can put me in a box." So I, like most of you, never in a million years believed it would be my child. I never thought my child, my happy but confused, sweet but unassured, loving but guarded child, would turn our family and our perfect Williamsville life upside down. But actually, it didn't turn our life upside down after all. It brought our immediate family, our extended family, and our friends together. Our child taught us all the true meaning of acceptance, tolerance, and a greater understanding of LGBT and the differences that makes us all special. Our child taught us that living your true life, allowing and supporting others to live their true life, and being loved and accepted for who you are is really all that matters. I read many comments recently from Williamsville parents who describe their fear of transgender students as gender pretend, gender fantasy, and gender faking. These are hurtful, inflammatory, and downright inaccurate terms. I can assure you transgender life is not pretend. It is not an easy life, and transitioning is not an easy journey for the child or their family. As a family, we've spent tens of thousands of dollars on counseling, surgery, and medication. Health insurance never covered any of that when my child transitions. Before I close, I want to commend this Board of Education, Dr. Brown Hall, and the administration for taking on this sensitive topic and for caring about the transgender students of our school district. And I want to remind all the parents that should your child or your friend's child or your child's friend inform you that they are transgender and you choose not to accept or believe them, let me share some very quick, stark statistics. In 2020, 52% of all non-binary and transgender youth considered killing themselves, and 35% of trans youth in Western New York are homeless or live in foster care. Sadly, many of these transgender students don't have accepting families or household, and the least a student can hope for is to find a safe place at school. So I will close and I will tell you, as you can see, I am not in a box. And more importantly, my transgender child is not in a box. My son is college educated, successfully employed, handsome as hell, donates his time and money to causes that he cares about. He is kind, compassionate, and forgiving. And if he knew that I was here tonight, he'd say, "Mom, it's okay. Those other parents, they just don't understand." Thank you.
The next speaker signed up for this evening is Suzanne Wagner.
Hi. I didn't have much time to prepare, so forgive me. I have 2 boys in 6th and 7th grade at Casey. What I'm asking for tonight is the board and the superintendent to advocate at the highest level to remove quarantines and enable simple COVID symptoms to be rapid tested at school. My 6th grader has been quarantined twice already this year, and he has never developed COVID. I got him tested. And he missed 12 days of school for no good reason. Catching up has been very difficult for him. Now I'd like to share a story with you about what happened yesterday to my 7th grader. First, a little background on him. He has severe acid reflux, which is in all of his medical paperwork from the school. He sees a GI doctor. He throws up very easily on demand as well. So yesterday, after lunch, he didn't eat his lunch because he had a loose tooth that was bothering him. So yesterday after lunch in technology class, his tooth fell out. He had no issues other than his loose tooth. His tooth fell out. It was a molar, a bigger tooth in the back. So it bled more than a little baby tooth. He went down to the nurse. The blood, the taste in his mouth and the blood going into his throat caused him to throw up. Understandable, totally normal. The nurse called me and said he needed to be picked up from school and COVID tested or seen by a doctor for vomiting, because vomiting is a COVID symptom. At what point can we start using common sense? I thought the point of COVID testing and seeing doctors was if we do not know the reason or cause of COVID symptoms. When can we trust the medical professionals in our school buildings? They should have some power in situations like this. This is clear, cut and dry, no gray area. He had no symptoms before, and he had none after. While he was waiting for me to pick him up, which took 1 hour from the time the school nurse called me till I actually got there, because I called his GI doctor, I called his pediatrician. I was trying to get a note so I didn't have to pick him up right away. Unfortunately, nobody could act that fast for me, but I did get a note from his pediatrician without getting COVID tested, without being seen, that he can return to school today. I'm not upset that the school nurse called me to pick him up. I just wish that we could start using common sense, like I said. I fully understand the situation that we're all in right now, and I know a lot of rules and policies are out of your hands. But I'm a single mom. I work full time. I can't take the health department on to change these rules, but I'm hoping you can, and you can help me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Tim Terrell.
Hi, my name is Tim Terrell. I'm a parent of 3 boys in Williamsville School District. First of all, thank you for letting me share my thoughts here. So I'm here today to share some good news and some support. With a little story leading up to it. So the week before Halloween, I discovered that my 3 boys weren't receiving the district allowed 5-minute mask breaks per hour to get a reprieve from the oppression, in my opinion, of wearing masks. I can't stand wearing these things. I'm sure most people would agree with that. And most of us adults would take an opportunity when we have one to pull it down, discreetly, take a couple breaths, put it back on. Helps you get through the day. So turns out my kids aren't getting them. So I said, well, why not? Oh, well, we have to ask for them. I said, okay, well, why don't you ask for them? Well, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to disrupt class. Class starts right away. So I don't ask. I said, okay, well, before I could say anything, he said, you're not going to email anybody about this, are you? And I'm like, well, of course I am. Yeah, I'm sure they'd like to know about this. I'm not going to be mean. I'm just going to find out what's going on here. So that's one thing just to note in your mind, is that for whatever reason, and I'm not casting blame on anybody, but for some reason, he was afraid. He was afraid that I was going to ask and it was going to blow up on him. So needless to say, my Halloween night was a bag of candy and emails to all of the boys teachers, principals at East High School and Transit Middle. The response was awesome. Basically, within 4 hours of the start of the day, I got heard back, and the teachers that replied were all very supportive and said, yep, the kids definitely can do it. In fact, I'll make an announcement in class today. Dr. Wall got back to me right away and said, yep, sorry to hear about that impression. I will make sure I get that handled and get the kids able to get these breaks because they deserve them and they need them. So by the end of that day, the boys all came home looking different. And I said, hey, how'd it go today? Oh, it was great. Teachers announced that we can have these things, these breaks. And it uplifted them. And I was so happy, that it worked out so well. You've seen me before, sometimes not all so happy, but I'm happy. And I wanted to thank, the board and the teachers and the administration for really acting quickly on this and turning it around. Other parents also said a similar thing. They were also very happy to hear about this. So then, of course, we all know about this craziness with Erie County and the letter that they sent. And then Dr. Brown-Hall, your response, which I would like to say thank you very much for being a strong leader, advocating for the children of not only our school district, but other school districts in the county and pushing back on this ridiculous stance that is basically anti-child, and it's just a terrible stance to have. So I will encourage you to keep being a strong leader, and you'll have the support of me and other parents as well to make this be a realistic situation for the kids. Well, thank you very much.
For your comments. The next speaker and our final speaker registered this evening is Deb Rogers.
Good evening, Dr. Brown-Hall, fellow board members. Thank you for being here this evening, and thank you for all you do for my children and all of our children here. I just wanted to start off this evening. We have a lot of really poignant speakers here this evening that I have to follow, so I don't know how exciting my speech will be, but I just wanted to say to your letter, Dr. Hall, you're a rock star. I really do. I think that over the past 18 months, I haven't really seen anybody who's been willing to stand up against Gil Bernstein, Mark Polenkars, the Erie County Department of Health, and you did just that. And that's the type of leader that we deserve and that all of the parents in Williamsville want. So I really, applaud your efforts, and I just think we all need to take a moment and give an applause to that. I think the most troubling thing to me is that I watched Channel 2, Claudine Ewing did a report on the letter from Erie County, and she said after someone complained about Williamsville School District, that's a red flag for me, and it's concerning to me as a parent that sounds like just one person perhaps was what instituted this whole uproar over potentially taking away mask breaks for my children and every parent's children in here. So with that being said, I'm very troubled by the credibility of our Erie County Department of Health, in particular Gil Bernstein. And I know you all sit here and your hands are tied to many respects of the laws and regulations that are handed down to you. And the other woman who spoke about the nurses in the buildings, I think their hands are tied too. But what I would encourage you all to do as leaders and representatives of our children is to push back on Erie County Department of Health. Because when it comes down to it, somebody with common sense needs to prevail in all of this. For 18 months, we have been dictated upon and mandated, and those political winds seem to change. And it's been very politically motivated, much of it. And I just think that it's time for this leadership. And if Williamsville needs to be the one that spearheads this, then so be it. And kudos to you all for being here and doing what you can to advocate for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and that concludes our public comment period.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of the board, I want to thank Ms. Mcclay for having the bravery to speak about her personal situation. I think it's stories like that that help us as a community to build empathy, because I agree with you, ma'am. It is about a lack of understanding. Thank you, Ms. Wagner, for speaking about your issue. Thank you, Mr. Terrell, and thank you, Mayor Rogers. All right. We are moving on to our consent agenda, and we will vote on consent agenda items 6, personnel, 7, business, and 8, special needs and student activities.
There's more public speakers. Well, I didn't want to speak. I think some of the kids were here interested in speaking. Maybe I wasn't sure.
Oh no, sorry.
No, they're for government. Yeah, and just so for clarification, our policy 1510 says you need to just sign up at the podium before the start of the meeting. Thank you for that. Next, we will vote on our consent agenda items 6, personnel, 7, business, and 8, special needs and student activities. May I please have a motion to approve consent agenda items 6 through 8? Thank you, Dr. Lippman. Second, Ms. Poland. Is there any discussion? Okay, I just had one question regarding 6A. The clubs we're approving a lot of stipends for clubs. Yeah. And I know some of them are elementary schools. At our community forum, we had parents speak about not being aware that those clubs existed. And I know, and I remember when I was a parent, when that club was available at the elementary school, it made it so that I no longer had to pay for after-school childcare. And that's, a big deal when you're spending the money on that. So my question is, how will it be communicated to parents of our K through 4 students who might not be using WITS as frequently as middle and high school, that there are clubs available and when those clubs will be beginning and whatnot?
And our principals have multiple modes of communication, whether it be a Connect Ed phone call. Our school newsletters, our principals do every week. And so that's a great vehicle to make sure parents are aware of the clubs and when they begin and the time frame for those clubs. I remember the parents saying at the elementary buildings, they don't use WICS as much. However, some do. So we'll still use that as a vehicle also. So there'll be multiple modes of communication so parents are aware of the clubs and when they begin.
Okay, thank you. I think that was just, I wanted to make sure that was shared. Any other questions or comments on our consent agenda item? Dr.
Make
Lippman?
one comment. As I went over all of the teachers and staff who looked at, working with these school activities, I just wanted to thank and commend all of those teachers and staff who provide that opportunity for our students to grow and develop and have enrichment activities. I think that's one of the things that helps separate Williamsville from other districts, the large number of co-curricular and extracurricular activities that we provide for the students.
Thank you, Dr. Lippman. Well said. All right, on that, all in favor for items 6, 7, and 8? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The Board of Education extends best wishes and gratitude to the following retirees for their service to the district. Lynn Grapp, Transit Middle School, for 44 years of service. Jean Halleck, East High School, 37 years of service.
Oh my.
Anna Sacco, Child Nutrition, 21 years of service. And Cheryl Wood, South High School, 21 years of service. Bless you. Is there a motion to approve the October 12th board meeting minutes? Thank you, Mrs. Beeger. Is there a second? Dr. Singh, are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed or abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're moving on to our president's report. Let's get caught up here. Okay, under events, we did hold a community forum on Saturday, October 16th. It was at East High School, and I want to thank everyone who joined us. We had a successful showing, and it was good to have some two-way conversation with members of our community. Our next community forum will be March 22nd after our budget work session. We also met with staff members It was called Conversations with Staff. This was a new event that we tried this year. It was held on October 18th at North High School Auditorium. It's a little bit of a low turnout, so we might sort of look at our timing for our next session, which I think is in January, if I believe correctly. You might want to consider maybe pushing up the time so that elementary teachers, wouldn't have like that full hour.
Yeah.
That might have been a barrier, to discourage someone from coming. Harris Beach had a virtual fall special education client seminar that Ms. Poulin attended on October 29th. I know you submitted a report. Did you wish to share anything at the table?
No, I think, as I said in my report, I'm sure that Mr. Scanzuza is really up to date on all of the special education issues. The one thing that did stick out to me was in regard to child find and how we publicize that. There were some really good tips and suggestions of ways to be sure we're marketing that to people who are preschool age families and who have children in non-public schools. So that's something perhaps for a future board discussion.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Ms. Poulin. The board visited North High School.
We're going closer next time.
The board visited North High School, AIM, and Casey Middle School on October 20th. Thank you to the principals at those buildings for taking us around. We have some upcoming board visits. We have one next week, actually, on the
November 16th.
and we're
correct.
switching to transit instead of. Okay, perfect. So the board members signed up to attend are myself, Ms. Poulin, Dr. Singh, and Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner. Is there anyone else from the board that's able to attend those visits? Dr. Lippman is raising his hand. Thank you, Dr. Lippman. All right. And I know we'll get an agenda when it gets closer at an itinerary.
Because we start the day at Forest, I believe.
Okay, I think you're right. Okay, perfect. All right, moving on, the Erie County Association of School Boards. There will be a legislative breakfast this weekend on Saturday, November 13th. Dr. Singh and Dr. Brown Hall will be attending that. There will be a speedboarding event on December 2nd. Dr. McClary, Ms. Poulin, and Dr. Singh have registered for that. Is there anyone else from the board that wishes to register for that event? Thank you. Upcoming meeting dates are listed in board docs. Does anyone wish to report on anything else from ECASB? All right, thank you. Moving on to the New York State School Board Association. The free virtual event, which was in place of their convention that was supposed to be held in New York City, took place on October 25th. Mrs. Van Slice, Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner, Mrs. Beeger, Dr. Lippman, Ms. Poulin, and myself viewed the virtual event. Would anyone from the board like to comment on this? Mrs. Beeger.
Yeah, thanks, Mrs. Leatherbarrow. There was one session at the conference that had to do with tutoring and just really in general helping students through this time. Talked a lot about learning recovery and how we've had 18 months of just really different learning platforms, whether we were hybrid and remote or even, being in school. And it made me think about where our students are today. And I was hopeful that we could just take a moment to identify some of the supports that are in place and some of the new supports for this year that are in place, because I think we've seen some reports as board members, but I'm not certain that even students or parents are aware of those kinds of pieces that have been put in place for kids at school. I often hear from parents that feel they need to go and get a tutor outside of school. And I was hopeful that maybe Dr. Brown Hall or even Ms. Balin, if you would be, or Dr. Balin, I'm so sorry, if you'd be willing just to give us a brief overview of what we have available for our student support for academics. That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And thank you, Dr. Balin.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Dr. Brown Hall. Good evening, Board of Education members, and good evening to our members of our school community. As we know, we have a long history of focusing on meeting student needs. And there's actually a multitude of ways that we have done that over the years. And as you know, and as we want to share with our community, some of our structures continued, some are enhanced, and we have some new structures in place that we are very proud of. And thank you for your support. One of them we saw this evening with our STEAM labs. While that may appear to be more of an enrichment, it is actually science instruction, hands-on and discovery and inquiry based. And we are looking forward to actually sometime after the new year, I was talking with Dr. Brown Hall earlier today, we'd like to actually revisit STEAM and bring you some additional footage, some additional examples, and some really some information from the STEAM lab so you can see them in action even more so. With that being said, we also do have some new programs that we started this year, one of which you are certainly aware of is our Universal Pre-K program. While we've had UPK as a service to our parents, they have been primarily delivered through our community-based organizations, and we're very fortunate this year through great work through Mr. Scanzuza's office and our buildings, particularly Country Parkway and Forest, that we now have 4 in-district classes. And that is also one of the programs we are wanting to highlight in the upcoming months for you and our community. The other one that I spoke of and alluded to during our presentation a few months ago regarding our math program, I had mentioned the learning labs, and that is also something new that we instituted this year. We have instituted a learning lab model, which is in place now at all of our middle schools and all of our high schools. And that is something that we have thought about for quite a long time, did quite a bit of research regarding what that model could look like. And really the design of that, as I shared back a few months ago, is to provide just-in-time support for students on a daily basis. So in lieu of waiting a period of time or testing into some kind of remedial program, this is a day-to-day pulse of what students need, and that is accessed both by being scheduled into it, as well as a student could self-refer and a parent could contact the school through the counselor or the building principal to ask for some support. So we have made it accessible in a multitude of ways for those reasons, because we recognize that in order to meet students' needs, the sooner that it is done, the better. And we know that is certainly one of the philosophies that we have, and we want to put that into practice at our middle and high schools. In addition to that, just a couple of other items for the group is Reading Recovery is a program we've had at the elementary level that services our lowest first graders in the area of literacy. It is a very successful program and very intensive because it meets the highest level of our response to intervention, which is that tier 3. It's individualized, it's very focused, very targeted. And what we are finding, and this is the same philosophy that we are taking with some of our other programs, Learning Lab being one of them, is that the closer you can get to an individualized, personalized program for students, that is where you will see the greatest amount of growth and gains being made for the student. So while we talk about many times, we talk in summary and aggregate and groups and cohorts, and those are all important, we really try our very best and really on an ongoing basis to know, understand, and be able to recognize and then immediately meet the needs of each and every individual student. We talked about a roadmap the last time I was here at the podium, and that's exactly and precisely what brings us to those needs. And then we act upon them, and this is cyclical in nature. So you revisit, you see what else has to be attended to, you attend to it, make sure that the student is meeting with success in the areas identified, and then you keep going. It is not ending. I can tell your commitment is constant. It's ongoing, it's meaningful and purposeful, and really that is the philosophy that we continue to take. We've also been fortunate enough, again, through much of your support and also through our grant monies, is purchasing additional instructional tools that are hands-on. DigiBlocks are one example of those in our math program. Also software. We have kept some technology that actually came to us as a result of some of our COVID discoveries as the pandemic continues. And, some of those software tools like our Greg Ting Math has been very successful in our program. I would be remiss if I did not mention, and we all know, and I believe this also was in the article from the School Boards Association, is that this goes hand in hand, though, with all of our SEL supports. It's academic and it's also the whole child, because that's one of the things, again, that we do not want to separate, because one of the things we also know is that each and every student's experience and what we have all gone through these last 2 years is very important when it comes to learning. So we want to make sure that that is also an area of focus for us. And you may be aware that actually by design, Dr. Brown-Howell, our leadership team, and all of our principals spent a considerable amount of time before school even started. And also recognizing, of course, academic focus is always a top priority for us, but so was SEL. So by design, we actually talked about, planned for, and implemented structures at each building as students were returning to school, and keeping that ongoing as we are moving forward. So we'll hear about the learning labs, as I mentioned. We also have our web crew and link crew, which we have continued. Academic intervention, I know you're familiar with. We'll hear more about that at an upcoming board meeting. That plan will be brought to you in January. So that one you'll see in great depth. It's quite an extensive plan. So you'll see that K through 12. We've also been most fortunate through our grant money to add math specialists and reading support where needed. We did an analysis across each building, work with our HR department, our building principals, and that continues to be highly successful, because again, our plan there is not to just add resources, but also have a plan when doing so. So we talked at great length with the building principals, and that was a true collaboration. And I appreciate across each of the levels, really looking at what the needs were and how these resources can be targeted again to meet the needs of students. So these came with plans, they came with implementation, they're coming with checkpoints along the way, because we have to constantly see if our goals are being met. And I look forward to bringing more information to you. Please know, and we want to stress, if families or students have any questions or feel that they are seeing something, sometimes we see things at home that may or may not be visible at school, to please reach out to your building principal, your building administrator, counselor at the middle and high school. But we are here to support one another. We're very committed to it. And I really can't say enough. Thank you for all of your support, and that of the teachers, our staff, our parents, and our students. Everybody has really come together to support our school community, and there's more to come. So if anyone needs anything, please reach out to any of us. We are here to help in any way that we're able to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Yep.
Ballard.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bailey.
Our NYSSBA annual business meeting was held on October 18th. Dr. Littman was our voting delegate, and so we thank you for that. I know you submitted a report to the board. Did you want to share anything at the table?
Not really. It's just, historically I've been there in person where you have more, vibrant discussion. I think in the Zoom format that there was a bit less discussion back and forth about topics, and no, it's everything pretty much what the New York State School Board Association thought was valuable and should be approved was approved, and items that they thought were problematic were not approved. So I guess everybody did their homework, and I appreciate the support of the board in letting me be there.
Yep. Thank you for doing that, because I know it was a several-hour commitment on the 18th, so we appreciate you taking that on.
Those hours.
Does anyone have anything else to report under the New York State School Board Association? All right. We're now going to move on to the approval of the dues associated with NYSSBA. May I please have a motion to approve the renewal of the NYSSBA membership and authorized payment of dues for 2022 as presented? Thank you, Dr. McClary. Second, Mrs. Van Sice. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions, motion carries unanimously. Okay, so our board has begun reviewing district policies. The policy review committee for the 1,000 level policies, which are our bylaws, we met on November 1st, and we will be meeting again on November 15th. I just want to be clear that we do post these meetings. They are open to the public, and there are notes available regarding minutes of that meeting. We won't take a vote on the minutes because it's just a committee that's there. It's not the full board. But there are notes from the meetings that are available for the public if you didn't attend. And for the record, no one from the community did attend. Let's see, I have in my notes that the 3,000 level policies will be meeting on November 16th. Is that still accurate?
Yes.
Okay, and even though I think that's the same date as our school building visits, right?
It's later in the meeting is at 4:15.
Perfect.
And yes,
Okay.
it's the first one on the 3,000 level, which has the blanket title of anything connected with the community.
Right, and then our 2,000 level policies, Mrs. Speaker, do you have a date yet for that?
We do. We are planning a meeting December 1st at 5 o'clock, which we shared with Mrs. Carey, and it's in the, it's actually right in the agenda now. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
That was shared with you as well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we'll make sure that all of those meetings get posted. All right, policy update 8290. So even though we are reviewing board policies in order, there was a special situation which caused us to look at this one, and I'm going to let Mrs. Beeger speak on this.
Sure. So President Leatherbarrow and I, along with Dr. Brown Hall and some people from North, had the opportunity to visit North High School government classes. They asked for us to come in as guest speakers, and it was a really wonderful opportunity for us to hear student voice. They asked us questions. It was a really engaging conversation. One of the topics that came up that was of interest to us was the conversation around the 20-hour requirement for community service for seniors. And actually, I wouldn't even say majority of kids, it seemed to be unanimous in the feedback that we got, expressed concern about having to require or having to complete 20 hours of community service just in the time when they're in government. It's not the whole year. So it's in 20 weeks. Several students talked about how some of them have part-time jobs that they need to keep. They have sports, clubs, music. They need to babysit. So a lot of extracurricular activities, but it wasn't just that. The issue that COVID has to play makes it even more difficult, finding places to volunteer, finding people who are working because everyone's short-staffed to bring in volunteers. There were just many levels of problems that went along with this. And the spirit of the conversation wasn't at all about eliminating the need for community service. It was more about how can we look at this, and rather than just saying you have to complete 20 hours outside of school, you know, I clearly am all about community service and public service. No one's paying me to sit here tonight. And service to community is important. And we want kids to have that experience. I mean, I remember even from being a senior in Williamsville myself, and now, you know, having kids, when it becomes impossible, you know, you find someone who can write you a note and sign off, right? I mean, let's be realistic about it. Not that we want kids to do that. We don't want kids to do that. We want them to have the opportunity to serve the community. So why we're bringing it to today, and Dr. Brown Hall, I'm curious to hear if you followed up, is we started talking about, are there other ways to look at this? Can kids work on community service projects in school? And can that count towards the community service requirement? Can we look to other school districts and see what they're doing? Because some of the rumblings we heard at this day was that that's not the case. And if it isn't a New York State mandate, then can we look at this to allow our kids to have community service experience, but not stress them out like they were stressed out about this? So
and what we're doing, and I want to thank Dr. Bellin. Dr. Bellin and her team, I believe Ms. Greco is working with Dr. Bellin to have a conversation with the participation in government teachers to say, how can we structure this so that it really gets to the heart of the matter, the community service, the public service, but so that it's not, as you put it, so stressful on our students, right? And so looking at what other districts are doing, looking at what's in the best interest of the student. So Dr. Bellin and her team are in the process of looking at that to develop a process and procedure so that we can make sure we institute that across the district And so that it's meaningful for the students and they're not rushing at the last minute to just get it signed off by someone, correct? And so that's what we're doing right now. We can bring you then the recommendation for that process and procedure, but not necessarily have it as a policy. I don't know that a policy is necessary, but a district process and procedure will be.
Excellent. I appreciate that so much. Oh, go ahead, Mrs. Fancy's.
No, I'm glad to hear that because in looking further, New York State, the core curriculum for participation in government, there is no hour requirement. So, and also fact finding other school districts, Falconer School District has 10 hours. Other school districts don't have any. It's about the civic readiness component and the community service. So if we can find how we can do that, maybe eliminating, a policy, especially hourly requirements as well, that we've heard are not consistent year to year even, and make it that it's meaningful and purposeful to prepare our students, that would be outstanding.
We'll examine all of that.
So I'm hearing that we're considering removing it as a board policy, but still keeping a requirement at the district level that would be more of a regulation or a procedure.
Regulation and a process, correct.
So for our students who are impacted by this now, is this something we could bring to our December board meeting for the first case of removal, or would that be preliminary?
Yeah, I think it would be preliminary, because I want to make sure we do it right and having the necessary meetings and examining the necessary. And we have, the next meeting is December 14th in short period of time, because we do have Veterans Day off, Thanksgiving break. So it might be too short of a time, but we will do the best we can. We'll be able to let you know prior if it's going to be on the board agenda.
Okay. And I was at that meeting with Ms. Beeger, and there was some misunderstanding about that policy. There was an interpretation that the 20 hours had to happen outside of the school day, and our policy doesn't state that at all. So does that, just knowing that even though there's still 20 hours, but that it could technically be happening during the school day, does that alleviate any of the burden on our students and teachers? Do we know if that's happened at all?
I don't know, because we haven't looked at it at that level, and so we don't know.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Because the students were just very passionate about it, and I would love for us as the board to be able to have there be an action that would affect them, because they're the ones who are
correct
stuck under this policy that exists right now.
I just that policy has been that way for a very long time, including when I went to high school here. I mean, it really needs to be looked at this year. I mean, I taught government. Now I'm, in 7th grade social studies, but there's different ways of teaching civic duty than having kids come in here for 10 minutes as they have, we saw tonight, and not even grasp or understand the concepts of what is even occurring in this meeting, that could be taught in various ways. So I'm glad to hear that you guys will be looking at it.
Yes, and I want to thank the government teachers at North High School for inviting us to attend.
Dr. Bellin does want to say
Oh,
something.
absolutely, Dr. Balin. Of course.
Please.
Sure.
I just wanted to say thank you for giving us the time to talk with our social studies teachers. It actually is important, as we all know, for the whole department to be involved in the conversation, because it has been in place a long time, although it's been revisited several times. We really need to look at it together so that we can really delve into the research. We've already started benchmarking, so we are aware of some of the other districts and what they do. But we also want to recognize, where we can embed in other means of meeting the objectives that are being sought, because it's looked at as field work for this course. But then the larger conversation at some point in time will also need to take place, because the concept of community service isn't only for social studies. There's a lot that can be done maybe moving forward that we can look at as a school district. And I really think in support of our strategic plan, that might be a larger conversation, but for the purpose of this course, it will be very critical for us to take some time, namely Mrs. Greco as the point of contact with our departments, across the 3 schools, and also with our building principals. So we will look at this, quite seriously and with great care, and come together with some ways to enhance what we're doing. There is quite a bit already in place. So in terms of what meets the requirements, a lot had to be looked at during our COVID times because students could not go on site to various locations. So there are online options as well and other ways to look at how to meet the spirit of the course. And certainly what we don't want in any case is something to be signed off on or done so just for a sign off. And I can tell you the teachers work very, very diligently to ensure that that's not the case, but we also don't want to put any strain on our students as well. So we will look at this with great care and thank you for the conversation.
Thank you. I'm really happy to hear about the collaboration that's going behind it because even though we as a board have the authority to just abolish it, doesn't mean that we should use that authority. So I appreciate the steps that are being taken to ensure that a proper plan is in place.
Absolutely.
I could just make one other, and I agree, the collaboration and what's decided in the work between the teachers and administration sounds wonderful. I would just request that in those conversations, if there could be consideration for the senior class of 21-22, mostly due to those limitations of COVID, as they mentioned, a lot of the kids came up afterwards and talked about, they only have so many weeks left and all these hours and how are they going to get it in and, whether or not they have to get it done by this semester. So, in that, if there could be some conversations about how it impacts these kids, just to help with their stress level, I think that would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Brown-Hall, I turn it over to you for your community update.
Is it me already? Thank you very much, President Leatherborough. So we do have a good amount of items to cover in the community update, and I will try to make sure I'm as informative but as brief as possible. Our digital equity survey. So the New York State Education Department has a digital equity survey just to make sure that students across the state are having the necessary technology they need so that we can bridge this digital divide. Now, the digital equity survey was released on Monday, November 8th, so yesterday, and the survey will be open through Monday, November 15th, next week. We ask families to please complete the survey on Wix for every child in your household. It gives the State Education Department great information on how our district, we are meeting the technological requirements of our students and families. So we appreciate you completing that survey. After school programming. So there have been questions, and we got questions over the summer at the listening tours about special education programming, transportation to programs outside of our district. Now, we do not transport students to after school programs out of our district. So we were attempting to structure a program with a partner that would occur within the boundaries of our district. So Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo had been working on that. The issue that came up was the staffing of that program. It was being handled by an outside partner, and they ran into a staffing issue. So what we're going to do is move forward with the RFP that we talked about earlier in the year, the request for proposal, so that we can look to establish a special education after school program in our own district. So transporting within our district is allowed, and it won't be a problem when parents need that type of after school programming support. Strategic planning. An update was asked for strategic planning, and I'll let you know the planning is going very well. There has been a lot of work already done in the planning for our strategic plan. Our next strategic planning meeting is Monday, December 20th, between 2 and 4 p.m. So from 2 to 4 p.m. And the activities that we'll be working on are our goal statements and our goal activities for each of the 3 goal areas. Now, we do have some parent openings on the strategic planning team. So if parents are interested in serving on the district-wide committee, please send a letter of interest to myself via the following email. And this presentation will be housed in board docs. So if you need the email, it's lcacchionetti@williamsvillek12.org. It will be in the presentation. So we do have a district-wide strategic planning committee. Then there will also be individual teams at school buildings that will be looking for parental support. And your principals will be communicating that information later in the school year about how parents can participate in the individual teams that will be structured at our school buildings. Health and safety. I want to thank all the families that have completed the vaccination survey for students of ages 5 through 11. So that informational survey was sent out to families. You completed it. The data we collected, we are sharing with the Erie County Department of Health so we can see if we have enough interest to structure a vaccination clinic in our district. So that information has been shared with the Erie County Department of Health. Thank you very much for that. What we are working on, the Erie Niagara Superintendents Group, the two things that we're working on are the test to stay and the test out of quarantine programs. So you've heard a lot about this, and the New York State Department of Health has issued guidelines on what that would look like if local departments of health were to do it. And so superintendents, administrators are really pushing this so that we can reduce the number of students that are in quarantine. I know a parent spoke about it earlier. So there are guidelines, again, out there that the New York State Department of Health says we must follow, but our local Department of Health would have to adopt them. And I know that our local Department of Health, they are looking at that, because I know for the test to stay, it requires a large amount of testing. And we're trying to figure out, well, they are trying to figure out if they're able to get the required testing available to institute that program. And then the test out of quarantine. So it'll be either one of those programs that they're looking at. So we're very hopeful that we'll be able to do that sometime in the future. At the elementary school, students in grades pre-K to 2 now have the opportunity to use clear masks. So we have the mask, there's a picture of it there. They have that clear square so that we can actually see when students are talking, or students can actually see their teachers. And I know at the younger grades that was important as they're forming their vocabulary and everything like that. So if you need to, please reach out to your building principal if you are interested in your child or your children using these masks in school. We have enough of these masks for all of our students, and they are washable. I know that was a big question. So I know some people have emailed me and called about a letter I received from the Commissioner of Health, Dr. Gail Burstein. Now, I do want to say, and I was sharing with the board members and our board president, the reason I wanted to share and be very transparent with that letter and with our community is to let you know exactly the communication that we received. So if there was going to be any sort of enforcement of that, or if our district was going to be, held accountable for the mask breaks that we instituted, I did not want that to be a surprise to anyone. And I wanted to send a response letter because I was very concerned why, when we've been doing this successfully over the last 9 weeks, why Williamsville was being asked to change. So that's the reason why I shared with our community, and I was very transparent about it. And I wanted to inform our families, because as a superintendent and as a parent, I do think mask breaks are very important. I will let you all know, I don't know if you've seen the press release from the Erie County Department of Health, but it does say that the ECDOH does not intend to take enforcement measures against schools that are providing students with mask breaks during the school day. So as we were before, making sure students have mask breaks, we will continue that. And many of our superintendent colleagues across the county will be doing the same thing. But I do want to say, oddly enough, with the mask breaks that we implemented in Williamsville, the requirements and the guidelines that were in the Erie County Department of Health, they actually got those guidelines and information from our district. And so that's the odd thing about it, because then they notified us via letter that we should not be doing it. And so that was just odd to me. But I appreciate all the help and support we got from our community and our surrounding superintendents regarding this. Western Region PTA. I want to say congratulations to Maple East, Maple West, and Transit on being recognized by the Western Region PTA for their work in our schools. So Maple East is a school of excellence. Maple West, Susan Dowd is a Shining Star volunteer. And at Transit, Stacy Dunford was a Shining Star volunteer also. A round of applause for these individuals. Congratulations to High Middle School Assistant Principal Heidi Buffamonte for being honored by the Western Region PTA as their Shining Star Volunteer. And also, congratulations to Country Parkway Principal Andrew Bowen for being honored by the Western Region PTA as their Educator of the Year. So let's applaud both of those phenomenal. Veterans Day. So please remember, Veterans Day is Thursday, November 11th. There is no school that day, but classes will resume on Friday, November 12th. So we want to make sure we thank a veteran for all of their service to our country. And that's it for the community update. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brownhill. I know there was a lot of information in that, but I'll go down the table and take questions or comments. So I'll start on this side and go down. Mr. Biscaglia, followed by Mrs. Van Zyse.
Yeah, I don't know if this is happening to other parents or families in the district. Can we check that dignity survey, equity for survey? Because like when I clicked on mine, my wife did the same thing for WITS. It's not showing up on WITS or the email to fill out that survey. And I don't.
It's in real small print on WITS. When you scroll down after their picture, it's like you have to go on the WITS homepage and scroll down a little bit. It wasn't like prominent, so I did have to look for it, but it was there.
I still do not see it anywhere on this WITS.
I'm wondering maybe if it's different for elementary.
That's why I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elementary, that's
Well,
something to check. 'Cause
we definitely will, absolutely, because we want to make it easy for parents to access. Because
I mean, I
information.
can't
needed.
find it anywhere.
Thank you very much for letting me know.
Mrs. Van Zyse?
I would just like to publicly share that I have a lot of gratitude and appreciation for the letter that Dr. Brown Hall sent to Dr. Gil Bernstein, because I found it, I believe we all did, but I personally found it very concerning that the letter was only written to the Williamsville Central School District. So I'm glad to hear the stance is we will continue on as is. So I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone on my left, questions or comments about the update?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just
Thank
want
you.
to also say thank you for that letter. You know, just a brief comment, like as an educator, rules have a special meaning when you're an educator, right? I was a teacher for 20 years in the Buffalo Public Schools. Rules mean something. And I've always tried to have respect for authority, follow rules, even though sometimes I don't agree with them, right? And when I don't agree with them, I act within what I feel to be morally, ethically appropriate behavior to try and advocate for change. But it was really concerning. I don't want to repeat things, but it was just really concerning that it seemed as if we were being targeted. And it bothered me that the letter stated because of a concern from a community member, because it right away the thought of like privilege came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who was it that had this much authority or threatened or did whatever to cause this kind of a stir?
Correct.
And a parent spoke tonight about using common sense. As board members, we haven't had a lot of control over a lot of these regulations. And I appreciate Mayor Rogers for pointing that out. And yet we've taken a lot of grief for it, right? And a lot of times we just have to keep our mouths closed about our personal opinions because we're following the regulations. But to know that, I'm wearing a shirt about science and we see the numbers of our COVID cases, to have a situation where we've been using mask breaks this entire time, there's no evidence to show that mask break is causing an increase in cases. Not to mention, the same kids are going to go to lunch and eat together and keep their mask off while they eat. So, it was a prime example of an opportunity to stand up and be a leader. And I appreciate the conversations you had with me as board president.
Absolutely.
Because it wasn't just Dr. Brown Hall going rogue. It was Dr. Brown Hall getting feedback from his board. And please know that we fully support you in what happened and
Thank you
transpired.
very much. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to move on to item 12, which is our finance, our budget development, audit recap, and historical budget information. So Dr. Brown Hall, I will turn it over to you and Mr. Matursky.
Absolutely. I'll ask Mr. Matursky, our Chief Financial Officer, to come up and give that presentation. Thank you, Mr. Matursky.
Thank you, Dr. Brownhall. Good evening, Board of Education. This is almost the beginning of our budget season. It's hard to believe we're already at that phase. But last month, you received a presentation from our district auditors, Drescher and Malecki. And tonight, what I'd like to do is just to go over a couple of the main items that will be pertinent to as we look at the basis for beginning our budget development, as well as provide some historical information that, again, it may be relevant when we go into the budget development process. So on the first piece here, on the first slide, our Board of Education is much aware of why we have an audit, but for our community, we're dictated by Education Law Section 2016A and Regulations of the Commissioner, Section 102.2R, that requires all school districts to have an independent auditor and therefore have an independent audit. So the items that were audited that you received information last month are our general fund, our special aid fund, federal grants, capital project fund, debt service fund, community education fund, and extra classroom fund. The presentation I'm going to deal with is only our general fund. That is the fund that we present to our community to vote on every May. And that is the fund that really supports our program and general operating expenses. So I realize this might be a little bit small on the screen. The presentation's available online as well. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of the items comparing these are actual revenues and expenses from year to year. One thing I do want to share is that we still are dealing with COVID, and these are kind of COVID-related expenses and revenues. So when you're looking at them, even back to 1920, that was when we actually had COVID that we began at the end of March without students through the end of the school year. And last year was not a full instructional year with students here, full classrooms. So there's a little bit of a change in these expenses due to that. The highlight here, though, is that I want to call into question is if you look at the total revenues, there is a drop from 1920 to 2021. And even with that drop, what you don't realize is that we had about a $4.3 million loss of state aid in those years, as it turned out. And we also had $1 million we received in CARE Act funding. So as a result of that, you can see that there was a loss in that last year. However, our expenses were lower, so we still came out with a positive. The amount that you see is transfers. You're going to see that in a couple other positions in this presentation. The majority of that is the funding that went to our capital project, our music project, and I'll share a little bit more about that. So generally speaking, we had a reduction in fund balance of $4.8 million. And as I go through this, you're going to see that in a number of places that will show how we got there. On the next slide, I just want to show the balance sheet side. And again, the major items here, if you look at the fund balance side, again, you're seeing that same $4.8 million that was from our revenue expenses. That's how it translates to our balance sheet. And on the asset side, a small drop of about $2.5 million. The result of that was really due to the transfer that we happened from the capital funds and what we were able to refund. So that dropped a bit, which is to be expected. Liabilities are really more of a structural type timing issue, not a structural issue that would continue in the future. So the point I want to make on this particular balance sheet is we're in a stable position, and that's exactly what our auditors shared. So next, I want to talk a little bit about fund balance because this is something that will come up when we do budget discussions. Our appropriated fund balance is in the assigned category. This year, we have $5,574,000 in our budget this year, and I would expect that to continue in several years to come. And encumbrances, that's basically an amount that if we had purchased something, put in a purchase order, but it had not been received, so we didn't make a payment, that's the amount that the auditors require us to accrue as an encumbrance. And so that's called the total assignment when you add the revenue budget, the appropriated amount, which is in our revenue budget, and the encumbrances together. That comes up with $7,783,519. And if you wanted to go back to the audit, it's on page 14 and 44. And the main piece there as it relates to our budget development is that $5.5 million number. And again, I see that as continuing. Unassigned fund balance, that's the amount that is subject to the 4%. And if you take our current budget and you multiply it by 4%, it comes out to 8.2 million. And that's pretty much exactly what we have as unassigned. So that means we have the healthy fund balance reserve, again, as we prepare for the next budget year. I wanted to do a little bit of information on restricted reserves and kind of discuss what they mean. Restricted reserves are kind of what that means in that you can only use the reserves for what they were established for. I'm not going to go over all of the reserves here, but I do want to point out the capital reserve. That's a little bit different. I think our board is, again, aware of that. That reserve has to be established by our community in a vote. And to expend dollars from it, you also have to receive approval from the community. That approval is usually done in the regular capital project proposition, where we include the amount of dollars we're going to take from this reserve and apply it to a capital project. And so with that said, I'm going to go to the next slide. And again, I know this is kind of small, but you can go back to the actual PowerPoint that's attached to the board agenda item. The key items here, again, I'm going to go over this kind of very briefly. You've got your beginning balances, which are audited balances from the prior year. And this is really showing every transaction we do to the reserves throughout the close process that happens at the end of the year. So you see the expenses that we close to it. That's important because reserves are not to be just sitting there and not used. So this is showing that we are using the reserves. We then are required by law to post interest, not a lot of interest because none of us are earning a lot of interest at this time. And then you're seeing the amount that we put back in the reserve. Going to the end, you're then seeing how the ending balances are. You're seeing them categorized into either restricted, assigned, or unassigned, and then you're seeing the changes. So the only thing I want to go back and point out is in their capital reserve 2004 building, that's where the amount of $10,182,774 came out. That was for our music project. That meant we didn't have to borrow $10,100,000 basically to support that project. That came out of the money that we had saved in the past. So that saved us debt and it saved us interest earning or interest payments in the future. With that said, again, the numbers, if you look at the very last row, that $4.8 million is there, and that shows you how it was affected by the individual reserves. So again, the capital funding you saw, I mentioned it was 10.2 coming out. 10 million was able to go back in. So we kind of kept that a different reserve. We kept a different reserve. And I will share that these capital reserves, they're basically a one use and done. So those reserves that we've used the money from, we can't put more money back in. What that may mean is this coming May, we may be requesting the board and the community to review and potentially recommend and adopt another reserve, capital reserve for future projects. So again, I'm going to go through the future fund balance and reserve uses. Our current reserve appropriations in our revenue fund is $4,130,000. And that is for, though, again, using those funds for items that are within our budget, within those reserve categories. And I don't see that changing either in the next budget process or likely in a couple of years to come. So as we go into budget development, into the next piece, I think that we're all going to be looking at pretty much a normal budget process this year. I don't know whether we'll be able to do a lot of program enhancements, but we definitely will be looking to do maintenance. You know, one of the things that you're going to see in the presentation on the long-range plan in December is the concern that we may have when the federal funding starts to go away. So the big key issue then is, what will the state do? Will they be able to provide additional state aid to make up for the loss? So that's one thing. Additionally, I think that we have to consider what's going on with the economy, the consumer price index, and inflation. And those things are going to be, in the past almost 8 years, the major increases in our budget have been salary and benefits. We have kept almost all of our other salary expense lines the same. So that inflation point may result in us having to increase supplies, increase some of the utility lines. Those are things that we're going to have to start to look at and see if we have adequate budget for them. So I wanted to move then to the next piece, which is a 15-year summary of the budget. This is really a reference document. If you look at it, it pretty much shows you what we have done from budget proposals, budget reductions throughout a 15-year period of time, up into including this current year budget. And essentially, if you look at that, it's about $95 million worth of a budget request, $29 million of reductions, increases of about $65.9 million. And these are kind of the key takeaways. Average annual budget increase is about $4.4 million. The average salary and benefit increase is $5.2 million. Average salary and benefit after reductions is $4 million. So what does that say? It says that our salaries are actually needing to be reduced based upon the contractual items we have somewhere in our budget to come up with what it is at the final budget. And that's something we'll have to watch. Additionally, salary and benefit increases of that 15-year kind of history, 92% of our increases were in those categories. And as far as this current year budget, 76% of our budget is salary and benefits. So looking at budget planning, again, greater uncertainty on state aid. I'm not so concerned about the upcoming year, 22-23. I think it's going to be following that year. The other major issue is going to be our tax levy and a tax cap. As you know, we have a 2% tax cap. So if the CPI is 2%, it's going to limit that. If the actual CPI is 4% or 4.5%, we're going to have a gap. And that gap is going to create more pressure on other areas of our budget. Increase in other revenue sources. I think there's a short-term positive there. We might be able to gain some additional revenue from some of the areas like sales tax and those. But the reality is 88% of our budget is based on either levy and state aid together. So there's not a whole lot there from other revenue categories. So that's why the state aid is so important to us. And then we're going to have to look at reallocating within our budget. So those are things we're going to have to look at. There may be programs that we are not really using as much in the past, and there's a lot of new programs. You heard about some from Dr. Balin this evening. We'll be able to transfer dollars to support those new programs. Recognize the HR amount of funding. And, I always say the compounding effect, when we add salaries and benefits, those things will continue to compound every year. So we'll just need to consider that, and the challenging economy that we've already talked about. And lastly, mandates. Whenever we receive new mandates, as we all know, the state never provides us additional revenue. So that results in negatively impacting our budget. So that, just to summarize the very end, what's coming next month, there'll be the presentation of both the written plan will be provided, as well as a summary such as this for the PowerPoint. And then we'll discuss that, and then more information on a long-range reserve plan, as well as discussing that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maturski.
Thank you, Mr. Maturski.
Any questions by the board? I just have one question, and I apologize for not submitting it beforehand, but one of the budget facts, you have the salary and benefit budgets, that 76% of our district's budget went to salary and benefits. Is there a recommendation, like a national recommendation, whether like from a school board association or a school leadership association or anything that recommends like what piece of the pie should go towards salary and benefits? That should be like a standard for us to aim towards?
Not really. That is actually a pretty typical amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right. All right, so we are now moving on to 12B, which is the request for a budget transfer. May I have a motion to resolve to approve and authorize the budget transfer as presented in board docs? Mrs. Beeger, thank you. Dr. Singh, second. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right, item 13 is our liaison reports. We have a motion by Dr. Littman for the Wellness Committee. Dr. Littman, I turn it to you.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to approve Dr. Singh, on the opposite side of the room, of course, as a member and our board liaison to the Williamsville Central School District Wellness Committee.
Thank you very much, Dr. Littman. Is there a second for that motion? Dr. McClary, thank you. Any discussion on that? I just want to point out Dr. Singh was a previous member of the Wellness Committee as a parent. So even though you continue to always be a parent, you now have a higher hat of school board liaison as well. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried unanimously. Does anyone else have anything to share under school liaison reports? I just want to mention, and I don't know, Mrs. Beeger, if you want to speak to it, but I read in your report that at High Middle, Assemblywoman McMahon came and
She
spoke.
did, yes. Yesterday evening at the High Middle School PTSA, it was a virtual meeting there, and she came because she wanted to have question and answer session with parents. The conversation largely was actually interesting around food in school, talking about food waste, ways to use food or incorporate local food into perhaps breakfast in our community, and also discussion about perhaps starting composting, using composting in our Williamsville schools. And it was really kind of her to join. I have to, full disclosure, I also had a meeting at Heim Elementary. Their PTA meeting was the same time. So I missed that part and was briefed by the PTSA at High Middle, and I put that piece in my report. But those were the main topics that she mentioned, as well as the conversation of aid shortage and how and not just us, it's not just a Williamsville issue, but teacher aides are becoming harder and harder to come by when we need them so greatly. So that was a conversation as well. I think it was kind of her to come and want to gain some parent feedback by joining the PTSA Zoom in that way at High Middle.
Yeah, that's excellent. Because to my knowledge, I don't ever remember one of our local legislators attending a council
First
meeting.
I've experienced as well. Yeah.
Was she invited to come or did she ask to attend? I'm just wondering, because this is the first we've ever heard of it, and
Not certain of that as well. And the agenda
Wonder-
stated that she would be a guest speaker.
okay, so perhaps that's something that PTSA can look into
Yeah,
to get a full view of the district as well.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point because
That's-
our parents are always looking for how can we
Absolutely.
advocate. And showing up at PTA,
Mhm.
one way that you advocate for your kids. Showing up at parent-teacher conference night is another way that you advocate for your kids. So
Exactly. And legislators sometimes don't seem accessible. So it was a really
Right.
nice way for parents to have a direct line to talk to a legislator if they had any pressing issues that they wanted to discuss.
excellent, thank you. Does anyone have any other liaison reports? If anyone needs coverage for a meeting, please reach out to the board through email. Legislative matters or curriculum matters, I don't have any items listed. Personnel, we're going to look at item 16A, and this is for per diem substitute teacher pay rate increase. May I have a motion, please, to resolve to approve the per diem substitute teacher pay rate increase as presented? Mrs. Van Sys, thank you. Mrs. Beeger, second. Any discussion? Mrs. Van Sys.
I have to say, I am thrilled to see this. We all know that, number one, there is a serious shortage of subs across the nation, I would have to say. And we are looking always to have not only subs, but quality individuals come into our school and be with our children and other staff members. So it's extremely important that they receive pay. We haven't been able to increase pay for our substitute teachers, and there's some other wonderful things in here that will be a benefit to a substitute teacher. So I'm absolutely thrilled to see this, and I thank Mr. Matursky, Dr. Brown Hall, to actually be able to implement this, because I do think it benefits our district in more ways than one. So thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. McKenna also, thank you very much for your work in HR with this.
All right, on that, oh, Dr. Whitman, go ahead.
Well, there is value in, as Ms. Van Slyce says. I guess my question is, since we usually approve subs along the way, will this change? I mean, when this is approved, will we get a new pool of people? And then would they be able to start before they come through the board? I guess would be my question.
Well, you would still be approving subs as you usually do. And I just want to be clear also, I should have said this. This new pay rate begins Monday, the 15th. So that's important to know also. But yeah, we'll still be recruiting subs more heavily. We'll use this forum also. If anyone knows of any subs that are interested, please encourage them to apply. Please encourage them to look at the new pay rates, the bonus structure that's also in there, which is very important. And we will always look to hire new subs and use them, and then they will be approved by the board during our normal course of practice.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Item 17A, Facility Improvement and Preservation Update. There is information in board docs regarding our district facilities. Are there any questions for Mr. Matursky? I just had one question. It was good to see that the project was approved and that we can go through with it. And I'm just curious, I know you had previously shared a timeline for that project. Is the previously shared timeline still in effect now that we have the okay to go forward?
Yes. Yes, we're going to be beginning construction this April on the security project on a lot of the buildings. So it's really split between 2 summers, this summer and next summer. And the roofing project, which you approved last meeting, that will also be split between 2 summers, and that's going to be starting this summer too. So yes, we're on the same timeline.
All right, well, good news. All right, 17B. May I have a motion, please, to award the construction manager services for the 2022 district-wide air conditioning capital project and authorize for future capital projects as presented? Ms. Poland, thank you. Ms. Beeger, second. Any discussion? I just want to point out, just authorizing this doesn't mean that we skip all the steps of getting the public vote and all of that. That still is part of the process. This just allows us to go forward with the planning that's needed with the construction manager. All right, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. There are no matters to discuss under special needs and student activities. Does anybody have anything to discuss under committee of the whole? Dr. Singh.
During our last community forum, there have been questions regarding the homework that we give our kids. And there have been letters from the students asking about school start time. Can we look into our wellness or curriculum committee, look into it and see if we can make some modifications to help our kids?
Modifications to what?
Either the start time or something to do with their school schedule, so they have some free time to, mandatory free time to take lunch or something like that.
Yeah. And so let's take one thing at a time. Start times is something huge, right? And it's something that this board has discussed many times in the past. And I don't know that there's an appetite to change any of the start times because they really are set And a lot depends on the start times of the high schools, right? Athletics, you have individuals that work after school, you have individuals that need to get home to be there when their younger siblings come from the school buses. So if that's the will of the board, that they would like staff or myself to go back and research start times and start some sort of committee or something, let me know. But I don't know that that's the will of the board, and I don't want to use a lot of resources in something the board had already discussed previously.
Right. So if I could pause on that, and Dr. Singh, you might not know this yet, but with our committee of the whole policy, when you bring up something for committee of the whole, the board then has the option then to vote on whether to continue that discussion. So you have the authority, if you wish to make a motion that the board consider future discussions or direct the superintendent to hold future discussions on school start times. That is your option. Okay?
I mean, I was trying to start a conversation about this because this is something it's in the students' best interest. And I think it just behooves us to talk about it. This is something that will help the children's mental health.
So are you making a motion at this time on that?
I would like to make a motion to continue this discussion
On school start times?
on school start time.
Okay, so Dr. Singh has made a motion to continue discussions, which we would then put it on the agenda for December on school start times. Is there a second for that motion? Dr. Littman? Okay, we can now entertain discussion on that motion. I'll go down the table, okay? So I'll start on this side and go down. Dr. Littman, did you want to speak first?
All I'll say is, I know we've looked at it through the years. It's always valuable to revisit based on what does go on. But, a further discussion of the topic would have value. I don't think we're at the point where we'd ask Dr. Brown Hall to convene a group of people and allocate resources, but a discussion and letting us spend a little more time with it, I think would have some value.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pullen. Did you wish to comment?
I may want to amend that motion, if I may, just to have a broader discussion about high school scheduling as a whole.
I think they might be different topics, though, because school, if I may, I think school start time affects different things, especially transportation.
Sure.
Which, when we talk about scheduling, that's a different conversation.
True enough. Okay.
Mrs. Giger?
Yeah, just a point of discussion. I respect what is it you're sharing. And in fact, a few years ago, this was a topic that we discussed at great length. I remember at that time that we really did dive into resources to find out if that was a possibility. What would it look like? Could we move high school later? What the implications would be on transportation? What we were presented with is that this was really problematic in our district, a district of our size with so many schools and the way that it's easier when you look at another school district and say, well, their school starts at 9. Yeah, but they have one high school, one middle school, whereas, we have so many more buildings. It's a lot more complicated. And so I respect the idea of kids getting more sleep, and I understand the research behind it. And I also recall just extensive research that was done just a few years ago that showed it would really not just be problematic, but also would be a great deal of cost right now when we're already struggling to have bus drivers. So if this does pass, I struggle with the motion being to discuss it more because I think it's always good to discuss matters that are in best interest of kids. I worry about the pull on resources, and I think that before we go down this road, rather than opening a can of worms, that we just go back to the work that's been done. I think there was a presentation on it. I think research exists, and maybe that may be what we just want to revisit to pull that out rather than going down the road of when everybody's so pressed to do so many things right now to redo the work that's really just been recently done.
Thank you, Mrs. Bigger. Ms. Kasmerzak-Bogner, anything to add?
Just to second sort of what Mrs. Bieger said, I'm not aware of the presentation that happened, so I'm not sure when that happened, but I would be, I'm definitely willing to go back into board docs and look at the information that was presented previously. I think that's a good starting place, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Van Slyce.
I also always am open for discussion. However, I'm not in support of it because of the extensive research that was presented previously. And I've already looked at 6 other districts. And out of the 6 local surrounding districts, one high school starts later. It would have a negative impact, I believe, on our district. And we always listen to student voice. And I think we received 1 letter on it. So to me, I believe that it does not, students want to sleep in, especially when they're older. My son wants to stay up a whole heck of a lot later than what he did in middle school. My job is to tell him when to go to bed because you got to get up earlier. And it creates a ripple effect because many of our students do have jobs, internships, other activities and clubs after school, as well as providing childcare for their own families. They come home first and then they watch their siblings while their parents are still at work. So I don't want to create more of a negative or to create any type of negative impact with this decision. And I also believe that this is part of college and career readiness, because the reality is when you go to a job or you go to college, you will have a class at 7:30, 8 o'clock. You have to show up, right? So we're actually teaching our children who are becoming young adults what life is really about. So that's my stance on it, that I would prefer not to continue discussion on this.
Thank you, Mr. Biscaglia. Anything to add?
No, I mean,
Okay. No problem.
I don't know if I even want to discuss it because it's the logistics itself would be mind blowing.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. McClary?
Yes, I will echo what has been said, that I appreciate that Dr. Singh has brought up a topic that he has feelings that the topic is important and that we need to review it. But I lean on the same side as Mrs. Beeger and Mrs. Van Cise in that we were part of or privy to a great deal of information before that kind of unfortunately makes the decision for us that it really is impossible to happen. What I would appreciate is if someone is able to go back and find that material that was presented before, because again, I'm assuming it's we saw a slide presentation and so forth, that could be available for everyone to look at. So
yeah,
unfortunately, I don't think it's a topic that would be productive.
Thank you, Dr. McClary. And I'll just add that, one thing that is unique to Williamsville is that if your child is really struggling with getting to high school for their first period, there is that option to meet with the counselor and adjust the schedule so that you could start later. That's granted, you're on track for it with your credits. But there are those options. And I think I agree with Mrs. Van Cise about, the duty of a parent. We heard at the community forum about kids being overscheduled or having, X many hours of homework, but there's so many course options. And so it might be a difficult decision to say, maybe my child isn't handling the AP course. Maybe they don't need to have 5 AP courses in their schedule. I have 2 kids in college. There's really no consequence if they don't have the AP course. They're still going to lead great lives. And so for that, I would also be hesitant to vote no on this. And I can also testify that Ms. Zach-Bogner has a great reputation for being a good librarian. And I'm sure she will look into our board docs search tool and find our reference of which meeting it was. I know who was superintendent, and I know it was before COVID, and I know Mr. Matursky reported on it. So I know it exists, and it's probably on video. Okay, so we'll go into that. So all in favor of Dr. Singh's motion? All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion failed. And we had 2 no, 1 abstention, and the rest, 2 yes, 1 abstention, and the rest yes. Got it? Thank you. All right, and then you brought up homework, and I do think there's a homework committee that's happening. Did you want to just speak briefly about that?
Absolutely, because it was brought up at the community forum, and I know one of the individuals that was at the community forum is part of the homework committee that Dr. Balin leads. And so Dr. Balin and her team, they look into all aspects of not just homework, but everything that goes along with that. So Dr. Bell and her team, and there are actually homework policies also in our district. So I know Dr. Bell and her team are still working on that, and they are always meeting on that. And the gentleman, Mr. Guarmero, I think he was at the community forum, and he's part of that homework policy.
We did speak about that. Thank you very much. Any other topics for committee of the whole? Thank you. Under correspondence, I can share that we did receive a student email related to school start time. We received a parent email about the rules of quarantine and the concerns about, elementary kiddos having to miss school due to the quarantine rules. I am hopeful that with vaccine access, that those rules alleviate,
We're hoping.
or that we get some tests to stay or
Right.
something. We need something. And we did also receive an email about the request for an after-school program for students with disabilities, and you did touch on that during your community update. I will also share that today I received an anonymous email, which I don't usually report on, but this individual wanted to comment that A, I was a female, and B, that wasn't a criticism. And he put that in the same sentence. So I found that to be somewhat comical and gave him my reply back. But please, you are always welcome to email the board. Please have the courage to put your name on it if you wish to be taken seriously. Thank you. In closing, because we are going to be moving into a second executive session, on behalf of the board, we wish to recognize all of our families who celebrated Diwali last week and send wishes of good health and prosperity to all. We also wish to thank all of our veterans in our community for defending our great country and advancing freedom across the globe. And finally, we wish all of our students, staff, and families a happy Thanksgiving recess. We have much to be grateful for, and when we start our day with gratitude, we are all better for it. At this time, may I have a motion to adjourn into a second executive session to discuss the contract negotiations for an exempt administrator. Mrs. Van Sys, thank you. Mrs. Yeager, second. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. We will now adjourn.